I was 8 years old and my uncle came to visit me, and I was living in Sicily at the time. And then he gave me this kind of disposable camera, like an old Kodak. Just looking through the viewfinder, I was kind of pretending it was almost like I could frame things out. I think that planted the seed of like, that's what I need to do. At the time I was in film school, the teachers there would always tell you, it's like, to get into the film industry, you need to start by doing PA work, climbing up the ladder. But if you're trying to go for those creative positions, I think that's not the most efficient way to get to where you want to be. I always did YouTube, and so I was always uploading, and I was thinking like, how can I just get what I'm learning? How can I just share it back and just make that free? So it was the start of the idea of the main motto, which is learn, create, and share. I started the company, that's why Kriscoart. Make it easier for the next person that's following your footsteps or following in that same industry. Creating the content and learning from it isn't enough. You have to really share it in a way that's strategic, especially now in the age of TikTok, Instagram Reels, and the algorithm on YouTube also changing a lot. And it's really important to really look ahead. What's going to work for my life that I'm building, my goals, what I want to say. The first moment for the career aspect came later down the road, and the first moment of realization of like, oh, this is something that I want to do for the rest of my life came sooner. So I guess starting with that first moment was 8 years old, and I don't have that many memories from my childhood, but that is one that is like, just I could still feel it today. And my uncle came to visit me, and I was living in Sicily at the time, and so no gear, nothing. I was kind of getting into the idea of it. And then he gave me this kind of disposable camera, like an old Kodak, the yellow ones that had this like cardboard fitting. And so it was one of those, but he forgot to buy the film to go into the camera to take photos. So all I could do was kind of like play with it as a kid. And so I was...
Minor detail.
Yeah, I know, you kind of need that to work. But it was actually a huge blessing because just looking through the viewfinder, I was kind of pretending it was almost like I could frame things out. And I was using it as a video camera, even though I couldn't record anything or even take any photos. But it was just the idea of just looking through that viewfinder and kind of like being able to also like crop out things and not necessarily like, I don't know, kind of things that were going around me. It was kind of like I don't know, like it was a playtime that I could shape and kind of have the world be how I wanted to see it in that moment. And of course, when I was 8, I wasn't thinking about all of this. It wasn't that like philosophical moment, but I think that planted the seed of like, you know, this is what that thing is. And I started seeing credits in movies and seeing the, you know, director and people's names. And so all those things kind of became an association of like, that's what I need to do. And so ever since then, I started the company. That's why Kriscoart, or not the company, but the idea of it, I wrote it when I was 8 on a napkin. So that's why it's like, it doesn't have a deep meaning or anything like that. It's just like a random name I came up when I was a kid, but it all kind of like spiraled from there.
Cool. And when did you say, this could sustain me? This could be my primary source of income?
Much later, obviously, because probably as a kid you're not even thinking about like money.
At 8,
and
that's
all
not
that.
top
Yeah.
concern.
It's like, how am I going to get clients with this? But it did come later on when that was actually coming a reality that was actually kind of scary in college. Like when you're, you know, getting in, your mindset is already shifting from, you know, in high school you're thinking, okay, how do I get into college? In college you're thinking, okay, how do I get into life? Like, how do I make a living? What's after this? And so that was, I always did YouTube, you know, on the side, just posting videos. I was always inspired by other YouTubers, other content creators online, especially growing up in Italy. That was kind of the only access I had to that kind of creative example, really. There wasn't much like that. And so I was always uploading, but it wasn't until college that I made one of the Learn After Effects videos, or one of the first ones that started to really take off over time. And that was kind of the first signal that like, this is possible. You could just share what you want, but also make some kind of income, even if it's cents or a dollar. But it was just that like moment of understanding that it is possible.
Why did you make that first one? What was your goal with that?
So, okay, this might be, I don't know, I hope it's not too controversial, but at the time I was in film school, and it was a very expensive film school, and still cheaper by most American.
Full Sail, is that right?
Yes, yeah. So in terms of an overall deal for college, when you compare it to NYU, other 4-year term schools, it is more affordable. But in the grand scheme of things, it's all super expensive. Like education for college is just, in my opinion, it's a little bit outrageous that it's that expensive. But it also has its uses. But like that was the first gut reaction during that time of going through school there. And I was thinking, like, how can I just get what I'm learning, not even just through school, but also through tutorials, and how can I just share it back and just make that free? And
Wow.
that was a big change in mindset for not just starting to upload, but also it was the start of the idea of the main motto, which is learn, create, and share. And so it's the idea that you always need to be learning, getting experiences, not just textbook, but also life experience and everything, creating meaningful things that you want to share with the world to have a positive impact. And then the share is you want to share back those emotions or that information, like what you learn, your mistakes, make it easier for the next person that's following your footsteps or following in that same industry. And it doesn't have to be film. I really believe that that applies to everything that everyone feels proficient in or they feel passionate about. As long as that could be shared back, I think we could just make a lot more progress overall. But that was kind of the start of that.
I agree. I went through film school both as an undergrad and grad student and dropped out of the grad program because I was accumulating debt so quickly, and it was terrifying. It became all consuming. It was all I could think about. Every day I would check my loan balance. That's not where you're supposed to be focusing your attention as a student.
Yeah.
How did you feel about film school going through it? How stressed were you about what might happen after? And what advice do you have when people ask you if film school is a good investment to start a career in film?
My personal experience, I was actually lucky because of the whole YouTube angle and all these things that were kind of starting to click early on while I was still probably halfway through film school. And so I kind of had an idea of, the teachers there would always tell you, it's like, to get into the film industry, you need to start by serving a cup of coffee, grabbing things, doing PA work, climbing up the ladder. After years, maybe you can get, PA or some kind of other like lower, below the line positions in bigger projects.
I was told the same thing.
Then get noticed, then maybe do bigger things. And it's just such a grueling, slow process that I think it works if you're passionate about films and you just want to be involved and you want to be part of the machine that creates it. But if you're trying to go for those creative positions, I think that's not the best way, or maybe the most efficient way to get to where you want to be. And so kind of carving out what that means for you and really going all in, like even if you are working a job or if you are going to college like I was during that time, which Full Sail is actually, for those that don't know, it's a even more compressed version of college where you can do 12 hours in a lab doing different things. So it's very long. It takes a lot of time, and so to do client work, to start making an income, and also to do the channel, during that it was definitely challenging. But it's actually what gave me an out once I was graduating to know, okay, I can continue down this road. There's opportunities that will unlock through this because they were already starting to happen, even though it was like, maybe like a $200 music video. And at the time I was like, whoa, this came from someone just like seeing my other music video that I posted. Yeah. And then it grows from there. As long as you're consistent and you keep improving, there's nowhere else for it to go. The demand is there.
So you had that first After Effects video take off unexpectedly.
Yeah.
What next? Where did you go from there?
So I just kind of kept following that by just keep sharing whatever I was either learning through film school when it came to like lighting, even some film things I was dabbling in, just some basic stuff. And then I was just focusing a lot on the post-production because that was also, especially if the algorithm picks up one video that's about post, that means your whole channel is about post. So you kind of want to make it happy a little bit. And I think I made it a little bit too happy during that time because I kind of boxed myself into that one category. Even though I wanted to do so much more, like my goal was, let me just share short films and little projects and also share how they're done, but that be the main thing. And that came on later on, but for a while it was just kind of like sharing smaller things that I was learning and felt comfortable resharing.
When you say you made that YouTube algorithm too happy, does that mean that only videos that you put up about post were getting organic traction and it was sort of ignoring your broader filmmaking topics?
For a time, it was almost like my fear of it that was keeping me from it. So it wasn't even like, it was kind of like, this is working. Let me just keep doing,
play
know,
to that audience.
yeah, and still maybe carve out time for what I want to do. And I still enjoyed those videos. Like those were things that I was experimenting on. And to me, like After Effects at the time was almost a little bit like further down the road, but almost the same curiosity that I have now with Unreal. So it was kind of like an exploration. And when you're exploring something new and you get to, figure something out, the excitement to share it back, that was kind of the driver too. So it wasn't just what works. But later on, over years, I felt a little bit that became a trap, more of the mindset and less of what actually, works or doesn't. Because then I did post some shorts, I did post other projects that went almost just as viral. So it wasn't, it wasn't necessarily true that was the only thing I could do.
One of many things I love about your shorts and music videos and commercials is that you turned it into a learning opportunity. So you make these amazing pieces, and then there's another video where you'll show that piece of work, and then you'll break down in extreme detail how you found the location, how the crew came together, the considerations as you were mapping it out long before the shoot even happened. How did you arrive on that formula, and how do you document everything that you're doing with such detail? Because when I'm working on a project, I'm so consumed by the stress of making sure it doesn't explode that the last thing I can do is think about how I would possibly capture this in a really nice, like the quality of that BTS is often almost as nice as the piece itself. How do you do that?
Wow, thank you. I actually still feel like exactly how you say, like I feel like I could capture things so much better. And a lot of times it's just all this material that was shot kind of as like an afterthought while getting the main thing. And then through editing, through other things and graphics, you can kind of make it work by filling out those gaps. But I'm still trying to get to a point where I could have even like a small team that could do social media live streams, proper capture BTS, so that you get just the full scope from different moments.
Right, who are dedicated to that. They can focus on that while you focus on the main.
Exactly, because right up until this point, it's been like part of the logistical problem of shooting something was like, how do I make sure that I can actually document this in a way that's not super intrusive? And yeah, it definitely is a challenge. Like it's not something that I feel like I figured out, because it is something I'm doing, but it adds a huge weight to the production. Especially I like to be very hands-on with a lot of departments of anything that I do, so I'm already taking on more than probably most people would recommend for the project itself. And so then adding this other angle can be challenging, but it's also some of the main reasons why I get some of the client work. Like I love the idea of what I could develop with it, but I also feel like this is a great opportunity to just see what happens and share that, like kind of use it as a bit of a diary, an open diary that people can see from my mistakes too. Because I've had projects that didn't even come out that were just a complete disaster, like life savings poured in and it was just done. And so sharing all of it, the good and the bad, I think is really important.
I love asking about production nightmares. What story comes to mind when you think of something chaotic you had to solve on set?
Oh boy. Actually, I don't even know how much. I'll just put it this way. One time I was getting very, very ambitious with a project that I wanted to do, and was one of the first times that I opened up to trusting others and taking on some positions that I would normally do. And it was just the wrong people, and they ended up like just destroying gear, sabotaging the whole thing, like not wanting to do a single thing. And it was just...
Oh, that's so stressful.
That was like layered on top of shooting in the middle of the desert with high winds, really cold temperatures, full makeup, prosthetics on several actors, a pretty large crew. I was stuck in this like helmet cam because it was all a POV thing, and the helmet was smaller than basically my head. Like I could barely squeeze into that thing. So I was already just this is going well.
Oh, that's
and then
awful.
Everything was just falling apart. Generators were just basically like fusing out, or I don't know, like a huge expensive light that I rented to be lifted in the air just completely smashed over and bent all the metal that I had to go to a metal shop to get it like fixed before I could return it and be like, everything's great.
No, what did they say? Did they notice?
No, I told them, I was like, hey, just make sure everything's good, because we were in a rough condition. I wanted, I was honest with them, and they did check everything, and they were also like, I think empathizing a little bit, because I returned everything the day after and I was just destroyed. So they probably were like,
they could see the pain in your eyes.
Oh my God. Yeah. It
Oh,
was
that
rough.
sounds brutal.
That was definitely, and I shared all that, and it was supposed to be like a whole redemption thing to a whole time off that I took from LA, and I wanted to come back with that, put all my life savings, and it was just like the ultimate disappointment. And now I can laugh about it, and it's fine. In the moment, it wasn't, but then sharing that also in retrospect to someone else that doesn't have the same emotional connection, they see it or they see me now talking about it and laughing, then it's like, okay, I can do mistakes. It's okay to do mistakes.
You can survive.
Yeah.
There will be another day.
Yeah, you're human and you're a creator, so it's gonna happen a lot.
That's important. You touched on client projects. How do you balance your schedule and your attention between client projects and your own personal projects? And what are the pros and cons of both?
It's definitely a hard thing to balance that, especially when you're, coming up and you're having to make a lot more compromises maybe than what your heart is telling you. And sometimes that's the reality of it. Like for the longest time too, and trying to not only do a YouTube channel, but a production company around that and all these other elements and hiring people and living in LA. Like these are all elements that when they stack up, they get very heavy. And so it's just making that sustainable and making sure that you can continue and still keep a priority and carve out enough time to create something that you consider art. Doesn't have to be Mona Lisa or perfect, but as long as your heart is telling you like, I'm fulfilled by this, I'm enjoying this process, make sure that that's a big part of not only the compromise that you're making now, but that's the goal of the compromise. You're compromising these things. You're maybe doing some sacrifices now to open up more and more of that space in the future for yourself, so you can maybe have a platform where then you're allowed to do that full time or 100% of the time or 90% or more and more. And I think that's the ultimate goal, and hopefully having influence also within that so that people can actually see the thing that you're making or the thing that you're sharing to the world. Those are the two main drivers. And so if you have to compromise a little bit and get to that next step and figure it out, and like I said, make mistakes and sometimes take steps back, and it's all part of the journey. But it's not about like making it. It's not about being a millionaire or, by 27 or whatever it is. It's about, am I doing a good job at shaping my life in the way that eventually, or even the next day, who knows how life works, but that eventually I can get to do 100% of what I love and share it and leave a positive impact to the world.
And what is it that you love? What are your absolute favorite projects to work on?
That could range a lot, but a lot of the times it's just my own projects. So like any idea could be Sci-Fi, which I want to do a whole web series with Unreal Engine, again being a big part of how that's made.
Awesome.
Documenting that will be really cool. And a horror short film, a feature. I also have other non-film things. Even some little weird things in real estate, like buying land, making sustainable living, making tree houses, other projects that I can.
And documenting that.
Everything. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Because a lot of times it's like something it was put really in my face being here in LA is that if you want to really pursue what you want, you have to figure out the financial, and it's kind of like an unfortunate step that a lot of dreamers don't really want to interface with. And I think if you can, in the process, build yourself emotionally, spiritually, and you can keep after those like creative urges or ideas that you're getting, the other element that makes all that possible is the financial, especially in the Western part of the world. I think that's really important. So even things like that, as unrelated as building tree houses or doing other projects in land, it could still be an interesting thing for another filmmaker to say, okay, that could generate this amount of money. It could free myself from these other jobs, and I can do my art. So it's all kind of tied in a way.
Yeah,
it could be useful.
Tell me more about the tree houses. That's fascinating.
That's like one of the newest idea, and it's kind of one of the wildest ones. There's a lot of side companies that I want to do. There's some that I can't talk about currently that are really interesting that hopefully in the next 2 years are going to come out. Yeah, and the land thing is it was the same kind of gut reaction as when I had in film school with the loans and everything and sharing free education. I want to be able to form an example of what a sustainable land could look like, with sustainable living, with affordable living, with experiences for people that are traveling that also might need healing, not just the vacation. There's also another project in Sicily related to that idea. But so there's a lot going on the side, and it's only remotely possible now because I've had to build up sacrifices to get to that point. And so then these things that come up, it's when they do happen, it makes everything worth it. You kind of get the journey, even the things that maybe you didn't want to do, or some of the things that you didn't want to do, you said no to, which was the right choice. It all adds up. And so as long as you're just following what genuine interest you have, you know, it doesn't have to be film. That's why I think it's important. Like, I started doing this thing where it's like, I say I do filmmaking. I don't say I'm like a filmmaker necessarily, or I'm trying to change that, because I can be anything that I want to follow. So it could be filmmaking, could be storytelling, could be music, could be tree houses. So whatever works. Yeah.
Can I ask, how does your revenue right now break down? How much of it comes from these, like a Samsung partnership, for example, versus AdSense, versus what other revenue sources have you created around this media empire that you're building?
Yeah. So on the back end, I feel like the idea of it is more impressive than what it is, because in complete honesty, the financial, it just bounces up and down, at least for myself, between AdSense and sponsorships. And like, for example, recently, after I think last year, seemingly overnight, my views were slashed completely. I don't know if it was like an algorithm change or something happened, and so my revenue within months became like a third of what it was.
Wow.
Just through and now it's like even like half of that, so it's like reaching zero basically.
What's going on?
I have no idea. I've emailed YouTube, I've tried everything I could. And to be honest, it is a blessing in disguise, this too, because I'm really looking at my content and I'm saying, okay, these evergreen videos that have worked for me and that have pushed all the other videos and all that momentum, it worked, and it kind of made me comfortable in that sort of way. So now it's like people are watching less and less, and it might be an algorithm thing or whatever it is, but how can I do better? How can I like see not just what's working now, but what will work for me 5 to 10 years from now? Not necessarily make the algorithm happy now, but it was, again, another push into another mindset shift of like, you know, I have a brand, I have all these other long-term goals. So even if I'm not satisfying or being successful by today's metrics for this video, or maybe the next video hits and then it doesn't matter, as long as you're staying in line with those goals and that why. And so it's definitely an ongoing struggle, but it also pushed to be smart about how I make money, and not just, you know, making the channel sustainable just through the channel, but how do I make a whole ecosystem that's linked, that then makes itself sustainable in different ways. So it's not just AdSense giving me the money to do the next video or to do, but it's that with a product, with maybe, you know, a sponsor being able to take a chunk of that and put it into ads and then push the other product that then, so it's kind of like you want to really diversify, and I've always done that, but it wasn't in a way that it was linked. And I think that's a big difference that a lot of times people miss, and I've missed that for like in a stubborn way for years. And it's like you think you're being smart by just launching all these new things and these other side things, but if they're like lines kind of like shooting out from you and they're not actually intersecting or connecting, you're missing out on a lot of opportunity and like strength in numbers and kind of lift everything together.
Completely agree with that. And I'm also, you know, tempted to go in all these different directions, but when you find a way to have those paths converge, you get that singular momentum, which, you know, everything can feed everything else. I would love to hear more about the Sci-Fi series that you mentioned.
I definitely want to do not just the virtual production route, which is really big now, like having the big LED walls, and the way I've planned the stories to kind of leverage specific shots for those moments. So let's say if there's close-ups, if there's like shots with hair moving or dramatic moments like that where you don't want to really get haloing or green screen issues or anything like that, then that side obviously works. But beyond that, I really want to push Unreal and see, can I even build environments and things that you're not just seeing in the background behind actors, but you're actually putting actors in that. And I think that currently Unreal can get pretty far, but if you're coming straight out of Unreal with those renders, it might still look game-like, even though it's amazing. It's with the advancements. But I think if you add compositing and bookend that with even After Effects or tools like that, you can really push things. And that's the challenge, is making that photorealistic and high budget feeling where you think there's a team, there's all these things, but really it's a real time game engine that's being polished up more and more with different passes.
So cool. So today's editor, who's wearing more and more hats, going farther and farther into visual effects and 3D, what's the software that is most valuable to be learning right now as we go down that path?
As far as like really future, as I was mentioning, Unreal, but in a practical sense right now, if they're saying like, okay, I need to not just do these like experimental or, like invest in it that way, but what really works right now to get jobs, I would still say Premiere, just in terms of popularity and collaboration. But for your own work, especially if you are, let's say, a filmmaker like myself that was transitioning into a more pro workflow when it comes to the camera I own, like I got a Red Komodo, and that changed my needs for editing in a way that I didn't even know I needed other things. And so,
how so?
Well, for one, it was just like even just bringing in footage from the Red into Premiere was not as straightforward as DaVinci, as like just to compare with another program, and then it made Premiere very clunky, even in terms of playback, especially when dealing with raw stuff. And I know it wasn't the computer because it was, right now I have this the new M1 Max chip or something in the MacBook. Yeah. So it's like I knew the hardware could handle it. So something in the software was like cluttering up something and it wasn't as smooth. And I thought, well, that's as good as it gets because it's Red raw and whatever. I just have to be okay with it. Then I tried DaVinci and it was butter smooth. And obviously it's like more optimized because they've developed with also the new M1 chips in mind. So it's a very different experience. And then I saw how much more color control I had even in DaVinci, because I've even, and this is another mistake that I'll admit openly, is like I almost lost a big client one time because I was doing like a lot of like different shoots that were for basically bikini commercials, and I was shooting with an A7S, which wasn't a big deal because it was kind of like you get photos, you get video, and it's for social media posts. So I was like, good enough. I get into the color, and it was just an infinite amount of rounds of notes from client, and they were 100% right because I get the direction and the feel that they wanted. They wanted like Caribbean water, even though we were shooting in LA in winter in some beach that was not like that or as clean. And so it was about extracting.
It looks like Malibu in your reel.
Yeah, I think it. Okay. Yeah. Or maybe it might have been Laguna too. But it had
to look Caribbean.
Yeah, Caribbean, and also the weather it wasn't summer. The weather was not great, and so there was only so much I could do. And I was noticing that with that footage, it would just break instantly. Not just obviously because of Premiere, also the codec with the camera was very limited. But then going into Red, it was like, oh, I can do this now in terms of range of information that I have in the footage. But then I also found the tools to do exactly what I wanted in DaVinci in a much faster way than what I could have done, I couldn't have done in Premiere because I would have to jump into After Effects to really get the color even that I wanted, rotoscope areas, track, and all that. And so it's definitely a lot more streamlined, and it feels a little bit more compatible with my workflow, especially now.
Yeah. And so are you switching? Have you already switched to Results?
Yeah, I started to. And I probably will switch also on the channel and everything. It's not a complete separation from Premiere. There might still be client work or other scenarios that would require it. But mainly for everything that I'll be doing going forward, if I can choose to, I'll probably start doing things in DaVinci.
Got it. Within Unreal, have you played with that human creator? I forget the exact
MetaHuman,
name of it.
I think it was.
MetaHuman, yeah.
Not yet. I tried something similar called Character Creator from a different company, but a lot of times they bring that stuff into Unreal. But I've seen a lot of videos about it, and it's kind of crazy.
It's wild, yeah. Like photorealistic people that you can change everything from the shape of their face, like colors, to their age. There's like age filters. You can make them any age. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
As we get closer to a world where the metaverse is something that we actually live in instead of just talking about and reading sci-fi about, how do you think today's visual effects artist, today's 3D artist, will have a leg up in creating that world and building that world? How do these skills that people are developing right now in Unreal, Unity, Blender, etc., how will those translate to building maybe spaces for brands that want to have experiences or objects in the metaverse?
Yeah, I think on like a practical sense, I think things like Unreal or even VR as a whole, like not just doing pretty environments in Unreal, but also maybe starting to play with like a virtual camera in there, or getting headsets and designing things in that kind of way, getting used to that way of creating. I think that's going to be useful. But on a macro sense, I think regardless of the medium of what's the next thing coming up, I think as long as you're being genuine, you're pulling from like truths that are part of your experience, and you share that and you focus on that story and that form of storytelling, no matter what the medium is, you'll always have an advantage, even compared to the first ones to do it or the most successful or the biggest companies. If you come in with like a really good story, could be from like a sketch on paper all the way to those kind of new VR worlds that will be built. And if you can make those kind of experiences, and if you can make people feel, and hopefully feel something good and positive that could leave them better than how they started from watching whatever it was, I think that's the real advantage. It's like, it's the stuff that always works. It's that magic that no matter what tool or thing you're using, if it's there, it'll work.
You can feel that in your channel. What are the
Thank you.
themes that you have found are lead to the most successful videos over these decade plus of watching your audiences and studying reactions to your work?
I would say the more vulnerable that you can allow yourself to be with the things that you write, or even the things that you're allowed to be inspired by, like, and not having really a fear of judgment or anything else, like all the things, if you really bring them back down to a basic level, a basic human necessity, a lot of pain that we all go through and just living life can be very relatable to each other, and just even seeing it or experiencing it and empathizing with someone on screen, which is something that you can't really do with a lot of other art forms. You really get to be them or see their world for a moment. That's a really powerful thing. And so to get there, if you really dig deep, if you go even through some of the more painful things, uncomfortable things that maybe even in your day-to-day life are not even coming up, they're just buried in your subconscious. If you bring that out somehow, and it's not just you digging or looking, but it's just being open to those genuine moments of inspiration, and getting it down as quickly as possible when that happens, and finding the best way to keep that alive in your head so that you can execute it as close as possible to how it first came in. I think that's usually that stuff it'll go a long way, not just in getting views, but it's meaningful and it's important.
I agree. Let's say you were just starting today. You had no following. You had, let's say, no resources, maybe just a computer. Where would you go from here? Building a new channel, building a new career as a filmmaker.
I probably wouldn't do the same thing I've done, which is, it's weird. I mean, if I had no knowledge, or if I were starting now, maybe it would be the same. But I feel like if you could find more people around you that could help you and support you or be in the videos, I think if you start from there, you can get way further and it'll be way more fun.
Okay.
And not to say you can't do things yourself. I mean, I think that solitude is very valuable. Editing is a very lonely job sometimes when you're just like working at the computer. But if you were just starting and you just want to make something, I would say really look at your friends or the people around you. And this could be also a good like life trick in general, and just like see who's really down with you and your crazy ideas or what you want to do, and who would really, genuinely be interested. Like, yeah, I'll be on camera, I'll be in video, and they think it's cool. It's not like, hey, can you be in a video? And it's like, oh, sure. And it's like they're doing a favor. Yeah. Don't right. Do things with friends like that. And if those are the friends, then maybe look for other friends. I don't know.
They're gonna hate it. You're gonna hate it.
Yeah, you'll be super demotivated. It's like, what did I do? Right. Let me not do this ever again. And then it's a core memory of just shame.
Right.
So
Why did I make them do that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, it'll be cringy for sure. Like the first times you do things, even with your friends that are down, you'll watch it later and you'll like, okay, should we delete this? But that's fine, because that's your start. As long as you're starting, that's the most important thing that most people don't even do. It's because they're thinking, how can I start? How can I do this? And it's like, really look at what you have, basically, is kind of what I'm saying. In terms of people, in terms of gear, like you said, if you have a laptop, you're already like, you have a whole world there that you can do. If you have a phone or know someone that has a really good phone with a good camera, get that, or even just find a way to rent gear depending on where you are. And that's why I've done a lot of like smartphone things, is to show that you can do it with just that.
And those videos are so popular because a lot of people want to know.
Yeah.
What do you think are the most interesting revenue streams, up and coming revenue streams for creators on YouTube and other social platforms? So interesting just now to hear about, the algorithm cutting views on it with no explanation. Recurring theme of this show is very few people rely on AdSense. It's their creative business lines that they build around their following that end up sustaining them. What do you think is interesting that maybe is not obvious?
I would say, if especially for things like affiliate links and all these other revenue streams that you often hear from creators, I would say the most important thing is to make sure you spend enough time to just set up as many as you can. Like, if it's just putting a link in the description and you don't even think about it, it's there and it might generate something. If you're thinking about a certain digital product or something that, or even a service or anything that's related to the content and what you're interested in, really go down that road and see where it takes you, and just try to do as much of that as you can.
How does affiliate marketing work? How do you find the right partners? And then what are the best ways of getting traction for that?
Yeah, it's all kind of rooted in creating good content, because if that isn't seen, then all the links, anything attached to that first kind of input into the world it's not going to really generate anything. So that's the starting point. It's not necessarily like what links are best or the companies. It's like, how can I make a really like a driving force that will convert? And then I can put anything in that description. I can mention anything in that video. And even if it's not something of your own, like if it's a sponsor, it's not just, I got the money from the sponsor, they have this section, I'm done. It's like, you want to really bring people to that sponsor. One, because if you took them on, that means you should believe in them, you should be using them, you should want to share that genuinely. And then for the sponsor's sake, they're believing in you, they're giving you a shot, and they're helping you sustain this whole other thing. And even if they're a small role in that, they're still an important role. So you want to make sure that they're happy. And so it all comes down to really making sure that you can put out the best content possible. It doesn't have to be a video, it could be a blog post, could be whatever thing that whoever's watching feels more drawn to, is making that as good as possible, as organic as possible. And then honestly, a lot of the affiliate links, a lot of the sponsors, all these other things came to me just because I was using those things. Or like, for example, even the Adobe affiliate link, the way that came about, which was almost like life-changing at the time in terms of income, because I had no idea affiliate, how that worked or anything like that. And I was at this Adobe convention. I was invited to be a speaker or do a keynote or something there. And I was talking about how it's ridiculous that, jokingly to another person that was invited there also, that I was still paying for the Adobe membership when, it's like all I do, all the channel is like driving so many people. And the guy told me, it's like, oh, I basically have that for free now because I put an affiliate link to Adobe. You should try it. And so I did, forgot about it. And I think 2 years later or 3 years, I think it was the CEO of the payout company that works through the affiliate service, sent me an email and then called me and saying, there's a substantial balance that's just been sitting there. And because all those years, especially when those videos went viral, people were getting Adobe products through those affiliate links, like a lot. And I had no idea until years later. And there was this there's an account that just had all this money in there. Not like, I didn't make a fortune, but it was like still enough for, at the time, to be like, this is crazy. Like, what?
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so it's things that happen like that, but just be open and just be smart and try to like get as much, because any little bit, helps. Like different affiliate, like Amazon for your gear, like it could be a few clicks a month, but it's still something that adds up in your overall ecosystem.
Cool. And you said a lot of these brands reach out to you. Do you ever reach out to brands that whose products you love and say, I'd love to integrate you into a upcoming project?
No, and I have tried that, like especially coming up, and that never worked for me whenever I would reach out. And it's honestly because a lot of the big companies, they're stuck in these like schedules a lot of times with the different agencies, and so it's kind of like, if they need you, they need you, and if you need them, it's a one-way street, basically.
I see. You'll hear from them.
Yeah, and it's not all companies. Like I'm sure that if you maybe cold email as a business strategy and you do 20 emails to different sponsors, you'll probably land it that way. But it's never something I really indulged in because my channel was my business card and it always worked that way.
Great. How will you finance your sci-fi series, that feature film that you mentioned? What is, when you have a following like yours, what's the best way of pulling together the funds, or is it self-financed? And then how do you recoup that investment?
Yeah, this is actually something new, and I'm really excited about it because I feel like it's going to be way out of my comfort zone. Because a lot of times I've been thinking, like even to fund music videos that were still telling a story that I cared about, I would find a client that was compatible or a song that inspired me to do that, or even a client outside of that would allow me to do all of that, because those music videos, like the cabin one with the snow, the one in the desert with the cars sticking out, that wasn't even paid by the artist. I actually made the videos for the artist for free because I enjoyed their music, but it was paid for from a client that provided some of the tools that I used to capture the BTS and the gimbal to actually capture the iPhone sequence for that other music video with the dancing. So
the one shot.
Yeah, exactly.
Video.
So I just found a way to like execute that without my own money in that way, and I didn't make any money off of that. And I went above and beyond even what the client wanted because they weren't expecting that. But I got what I wanted.
Those videos have been so popular. You've definitely gotten your return.
Yeah,
it's. I would imagine.
And plus, yeah, in so many indirect ways too. Like it's hard to quantify that because then people see it or they reach out because of that, and they have another opportunity that's similar maybe. So over time, it's always going to have good return. Okay,
so specifically for the sci-fi series, could you see yourself? Well, how much can you share about that?
Right now? So I would share all of it, but it's tied to an IP that I'm currently trying to wiggle my way into, and I don't think I'll get in any trouble. Basically, I'm a fan of the Doom games. Like growing up, Doom 3 especially, the more horror type. It would freak me out, and I would pause, and then I was like, okay, I got to get through this level, and I would continue. And as a kid, that feeling kind of stayed with me, and so basically, I want to do a live action adaptation that's not related necessarily to the story arcs or anything there, but it's in that world.
That would be such a hit.
Yeah,
I would love to see that.
Yeah, especially because what Universal has done, the first movie, great, it's a classic, it's cheesy, but it's in the 90s, you love it. The sequel they made, I was like, I don't know. I feel like this franchise needs a little. I mean, I don't want to throw shade or anything, but there's an opening there that I think would be interesting because it's something that resurged now, especially with the recent games. There's a very dedicated following, and so bringing the forefront on Unreal, getting all those like UAC labs and all that stuff done in Unreal, which I already built out that stuff. It's just
cool.
Yeah, and going back to your question about how do you actually make it happen, this is going to be a very new strategy for me to where I'm basically writing out 2 seasons of it in full script form, and I'm also doing full storyboarding for everything, but very detailed, very polished, doing concept art.
How long is a season?
Between 8 and 10
episodes per season.
Yeah, and so, but the main thing that I'm really hoping that will work is that all of that material, you'll basically be able to like really flip through the series and see it exactly how it will be, and all of that is going to be packaged into this like really ancient looking book. I basically found on Etsy people that make these like fantasy like big books with like hardcovers and maybe even locks and metal elements. It looks really cool.
Oh, cool.
So I would basically put all that, high quality printing, high quality photos. It's this giant book, and I'm gonna probably make several of these. And I'm basically going through the credits of anything related to Doom. So even going back to the IP, even the game developers themselves, and just try to identify who could make this happen, and just really impress them. Just not throw a stack of a script or an email that will be tossed away, but it's like
the ultimate pitch.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Okay. At least in that iPhone 11 music video, you have that book theme. I love how you sort of storyboard where the shots are going to happen in that book, and it's like a beautiful animation that like transforms into other stuff. So there's a book motif here.
Yeah.
And so let's say you find someone who makes it possible on the IP front. Are you then looking for investors to finance the movie? Would you consider a crowdfunding? I'm sure that could be very successful given your passionate audience. Would you bring in sponsors to fund it through product placement or through using certain gear that then you can talk about the making of, etc.?
Yeah, I think it's all kind of, those ideas will be packaged up. The main, except for probably the crowdfunding, I'm not sure for this idea. For other things it could work. But for this, I think because there is such a strong IP that also Universal purchased, there might be a way in to get it properly done, like proper movie, and maybe get also investors, or maybe at that point there might be other leads or other contacts where that could happen. And then I'll probably always want to share what I'm doing, especially if I'm doing something as cool as that. If that gets greenlit, I definitely want to show BTS all out, everything.
That'd be a great behind the scenes.
And I think that's an added additional bonus for them too, or whoever is, getting this on their table. It's like, if also all of this stuff happens, which I feel like most projects should do. Like even Netflix, they'll sometimes release like these people just talking about it and showing very few clips of the BTS. It's like, no, just show me how it was done. I think that's going to happen more and more. So it's definitely an added value that maybe it'll help in getting it pitched.
Awesome. So in that project or in the feature, what roles would you have? So writer, director, producer, would you be in it?
Probably not
editor
in it. But editor probably, or supervising at least. And I would say DP. I kind of want to keep the directing and DP tied together.
That's not easy to do.
I'm only confident in saying that because I have some contacts of like strong gaffers that if I tell them, like I would love an HMI coming through this window, they can execute that in a safe way with the team so that I'm not running around.
Yeah, you can speak their language.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So if you have a strong gaffer and even just good PAs, like a good PA will make a big difference, especially when it comes to like electrical and gear and things like that. So with a strong team, I feel comfortable in doing that. And in general, I feel like it shortcuts a lot of the execution for me, because instead of having to explain it to another person, it's already there, like how I see it.
For people who want to become part of your fold, they want to be on your crew, they want to get into the industry through productions like that. How do you find your crew? What stands out? I'm sure you get a lot of interest.
Yeah, so far it's been mainly through like people to people contact. Like I am, especially with the friends that I have, they're all kind of in the industry in some way. So a lot of times it's been the people have been there. Like I know this person. Like very rarely do we have to outreach. I did some outreaching for hiring as far as employees for like the company, like an assistant and research and marketing and that kind of thing. And that was definitely a grueling process because I had no idea how to hire people or what the right,
It's hard.
Yeah, it's really hard to also identify someone that's presenting themselves as great and then they're not. And so then what do you do after that? And I worked with friends, hired friends. That's something I won't do that much more.
Oh, that's very hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a process, but yeah, usually it's just like even starting from nothing, it's just identify who you have around and just who believes in you. I think that matters more than even what they know how to do, because if they're just down to even get dirty with the production, do run and gun, do things that maybe some safety measures would not, it's just getting it done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that attitude.
Yeah, it's the camaraderie of like, let's do it. If I see that, like everything else, it can come. They can learn it. They can make mistakes, and we might lose time, but it doesn't matter because we're all in it. And that's a very different thing than someone that's snobbish and they're in the union maybe and they're a big shot and then they don't want to really like hold a gimbal for too long. Or I don't know. I've had some of those too.
Yeah, I've experienced that.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for people, passionate editors, talent editors / post artists interested in maybe animation or visual effects? What advice do you have for making a career, for moving as quickly as possible to getting their working on the projects that they want to work on and getting their work seen by large audiences?
Yeah, I definitely think that creating the content and learning from it isn't enough. You have to really share it in a way that's that's strategic in a way that's that again serves the goals that you have, like what we're saying, of carving up more time, of doing the things that you love. So everything in the way that you share it, the platform, the type of content, considering the platform, especially now in the age of TikTok, Instagram Reels, and the algorithm on YouTube also changing a lot. And sometimes they want long form content, sometimes they want short form. So it's kind of, like I said earlier, it's like, it's not about really making the algorithm happy now. It's more about like what works for me down the line 5-10 years. I think that's more important. But if it can be both, obviously that's way better. And so if you are just aware of the world, really, of what's trending, of what people want to hear right now, even emotionally, if you can like leverage that, and it's kind of, in sync, and it's compatible with what you want to do, I think going down that road is going to be the most, I guess, like, it'll get you there quicker because it's what's closer to what's meant for you. If you're trying to control everything and be like, oh, I have to get this money because of this project and that's a part of it. And, and feeding the algorithm and all these things, like, that pressure is real, obviously. And I'm feeling it too now because of the dip and everything. Like, it's very real, but it should never be a complete distraction for what is really meant for you. Like, that's why I said emotionally, like spiritual health, like obviously being physically fit, like these are at the core. If you don't have that balance, those opportunities will have a much harder time to kind of light your way because you're looking down so much on, like, and I felt into that. So that's why I'm saying that it's really important to really look ahead, what's going to work for my life that I'm building, my goals, what I want to say, and everything else in the moment of right now, what works, the trend of hopping into that next wave. It'll get you there, it'll get you further in career-wise or whatever else, but it should never overtake the main thing and the main path that you have.
That's awesome. What can we look forward to next? What are you working on right now that's coming up?
Yeah, so there's definitely I feel like in a much more experimental phase right now. Like, there's a bunch of ideas that are very even unrelated to the channel, unrelated to almost anything that I've done so far. And so that's very exciting. I mean, I think we mentioned the very beginning, like weird ideas like land building and tree houses, sustainable living. There's again, another project I really mention that I'm probably really excited for, games as well. I actually recently joined up forces with my dad, which was a very unlikely partnership in a way for Unreal and things like that. But my dad, just to preface, he's like the smartest person I've ever met in my life. He's like a nuclear physicist. He's done research, and it's just really inspiring. And so he knows how to code, obviously, with that kind of scientific mind. Yeah. And so we're pairing up to release some hopefully really cool stuff with Unreal, not just for filmmaking, but extending what's possible there, but also maybe make some games and other means. Yeah.
What do you think is at what point do esports and gaming and video production, animation converge and become inseparable?
Yeah, I think in some way or another, we're already there in a lot of ways. From a job perspective, the crossover is there, even just for the events. Obviously, you get hired to visuals and all that. But even in terms of like the actual product itself, like a game, if you even look at the like the Naughty Dog games, I don't know if you're familiar with that game company. They make Uncharted, they make The Last of Us. When you play those games, you're like, the game mechanics aren't even like that great in terms of, you can compare it to Grand Theft Auto. You can do way more, it's smoother, but you're so invested in the story that doesn't even matter. It's like secondary. You're engaged from beginning to end. And if you're maybe like sensitive like me, you might even cry at the end of the game because it's that good. So I think it's already happening in a way, and I think the crossover too of what a game is and what a movie is, those lines are going to get more and more blurred over time, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kris, thank you very much. For people who want to engage with you more, where can they find you beyond your YouTube channel?
Yeah, I'm really working hard on my website right now, Kriscoart.com. There might still be bugs. I don't know. I'm building all that myself too, so it's not perfect, but I've been improving it a lot. I launched a marketplace there, so Kriscoart.com/shop, which has been also another big element in all the things that we've been talking about and making things sustainable. So there's digital products there. But overall, my website in general, it's a little bit more organized in terms of how to find stuff, because YouTube could just be like a bunch of videos and playlists and that's it.
Yep.
So that's probably the best way.
What digital products do you have right now, and what are you working on?
Yeah, so I have things that would help editors and VFX artists to kind of, for now, add that final touch at the end. So whether it's overlays, things of that nature, or even some light elements that you can add to a VFX shot to get that extra interaction within the barrel of the lens that will help sell that VFX, things of that nature.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. I'm excited to see everything coming up, especially that Doom series.
Yeah, I hope that happens, but
It's going to happen.
yeah,
It's going to happen.
we'll believe in it.